Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and today with us we have a very distinguished officer and a gentleman. We have with us Lieutenant General VP Singh, who has been a highly decorated officer and served India for nearly 4 decades in India's armed forces. He has also been quite scholarly. He has lectured in military colleges, has had international experience and command experience. You can see all of that from his illustrious bio. For those of you who are curious about it, I will be posting this in a summary on LinkedIn. You can go there and review his brilliant career, and you can even connect with him if you so choose to do. But today, what we are going to do is we are going to discuss the war with Iran, and we are going to look at it from the perspective of military tactics and strategy, and essentially explore what are the developments that are taking place in this war. So, General Saab, first of all, thank you very much for joining Conversations and welcome back.
You're welcome, Dr. Saab. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me begin by quickly summarizing that this war, which was supposed to end, according to Donald Trump, in 4 to 6 weeks, and his initial goals were maximalist. He expected that there would be a complete and unconditional surrender by Iran. There would be regime change. They would install a pro-Israel government, which would recognize Israel as its first act. And that would dismantle Iran's nuclear infrastructure. They would collect all the enriched uranium. They would end its ballistic missile program and end its support for its proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis. This was the agenda with which this war was started. And Donald Trump expected that to be achieved in 4 to 6 weeks. We are now nearly 5 months apart, and none of those goals have been achieved. Like, it's an utter failure. If I were to grade Donald Trump's military efforts, it would be 0 out of 100 because he hasn't achieved any of the target. They have damaged Iran significantly, undoubtedly, in terms of Iran's infrastructure, its navy is gone, etc. But the goals of the war have not been achieved. Not only that, Hormuz used to be free before February, and now Hormuz is under control, and Iran is holding the global economy ransom. So this is where the state of the war is. So I want to ask you, General Saab, to begin with, is like, how do you assess this war? Like when, as you look at it as a military tactician, what are you seeing?
Okay. So, firstly, I will avoid going to the technical side of the warfare because that may be a little boring for your audience. But I'll make some markers. One is, I wish Donald Trump had spoken to Putin before launching this war, because about 3 years back, Putin exactly did the same thing. He launched a special military operation in Ukraine and he thought in 7 days' time everything will be over. And a couple of years have gone by. So he should have at least read that war, if not any other war. 2, 3 things that he could have perhaps picked up from there. One is that it's not in your control that you are going to finish the operation in 7 days. Enemy is also going to do something about it. The second thing was, war, when it starts, it is like a honey pot. It attracts a lot of bees. And the balance starts shifting up and down. Like in the case of Ukraine, same thing happened. Like moment Russians started moving in, all kind of support came from NATO, this, that, and all kind of things. So virtually, he was not fighting with just non-nuclear Ukraine. He was fighting with so many enemies. Same thing has happened in the case of Iran. Now, of course, it has been, so much has been written, so much people have spoken about it. There are some major mistakes that Donald Trump has done. I'll give you a small example. It's like a very critical patient has been wheeled into an operation theater. He's unconscious, it's all over. And immediately the team of surgeons, they assemble around. Now they have the investigations with them. That is, I call it the intelligence with them, that this is an accident case. His MRI says this, CAT scan says this, X-ray says this, and everything. So all those intelligence are available. Body is in a messed up shape. But moment they open up, while all the investigations or all the intelligence is available, what they find inside is something very, very different. And then the actual work starts. All these surgeons are well trained, all the investigations are in your hand, yet you find surprises every minute as you proceed. Warfare is also like a surgical procedure. You start from A and you follow the chain, go to D, C, E, Z, or wherever it is. In case of Donald Trump, I think he made two cardinal mistakes, and which is actually very puzzling. That one is the intelligence. He never thought, like you mentioned, that Iran is going to fight it out like that. Never. And the second thing was, which surprises actually me, that both USA and Israel, they are partner together in this war. On one hand, they had such excellent intelligence that they could kill Khomeini, they could kill Qasimi. I mean, through the window they could attack. Such minute details and intelligence is available. And now we are told that they have no idea as to where the enriched uranium is. They have no idea how many underground manufacturing factories are there, how many missiles are being produced, and what is the quality of missile and things like that. Now that is absolutely puzzling. That when you took on Iran, you had no idea that what is the actual capacity of Iran. Now, right now, what is happening, Dr. Sir, that we are in the middle of what you call the fog of war. There is so much of confusion that you listen to any Iranian scholar, he will say we'll throw out America in 2 days' time. You listen to some American scholar, they have different, of course, America being a democracy, there is a very fair amount of information is coming out from there, but not so much from Iran. So what is happening in this war, a lot of ways there, endurance and the capacity of Iran to withstand pain is enormous. And USA is actually getting baffled on that score, that how much more pain it can cause and what can they achieve out of that. My major issue about this war is that there are certain very, what should I say, basic issues which will not finish this war in a, I would say, a positive note. Like, tell me, if somebody says in Iran, Merkbar F America, or somebody says Israel has no right to exist. Now, these are the seed thoughts. If population is believing in these kind of cliches, no war can ever bring in permanent peace, which is the aim of all wars. And this is what the problem in Iran and USA war is, that the seed thought of this war is very, very deep. Even if it concludes, say, tomorrow, there's no guarantee that Americans will not come back day after tomorrow and things like that. So right now, the nature of war, what we are seeing, apart from all the technology and other thing, that it is going to be a very prolonged war. Even if it terminates now, it may not, what they say, the permanent peace, it will not come in. That's what my broad assessment about this war right now is.
You made a very interesting point, General Saab. I mean, the point that you made was that the war started with a demonstration of stunning intelligence capabilities by Israel and the United States. They knew exactly when this meeting was taking place with Khomeini and who were there. And in fact, it was not scheduled for 29th of February when they attacked. They did it because they got the intelligence. And if you remember, how Hamas leader Hania was killed. He was killed with a bomb that was planted in an IRGC guest house, and that was planted months in advance. They used facial recognition. So they showed tremendous intelligence, but as the war has progressed, you are correct. It appears that the intelligence has dried out, and we know less and less about Iran. And Iran has got better and better, which is also quite surprising. I wanted to share with you a moment I had. And there was a moment where this was when George W. Bush was talking about the axis of evil. And there was active consideration of, once we finish Iraq in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we will go into Iran next was the plan, to go and spread democracy in the Middle East. And I remember getting into an argument with a Navy admiral. And I just made a casual remark. I said, look, the Iranians can't even talk to the Iraqis. And I realized that he didn't know or he didn't register in his head that Iranians are Persians and Iraqis are Arabs, even though both are Shia. So ordinary conversation is potentially not possible. So I think there's a cultural prejudice in the American establishment which prevents them from making positive assessment. Like they would not have assessed that Iran is a resilient population, that the population will not rebel. So they bought the Israeli intelligence that there will be mass protests. And if a couple of days ago, videos have started leaking about Lindsey Graham, which say that they thought that within a few weeks, many cities would have been out of control of the Iranians. So the intelligence that the Israelis were providing was completely designed to propel the US in this war. But if you look at the war itself from the tactics, this is a war of asymmetry, right? Two very powerful countries who are fighting from a distance. There is no ground warfare at all from the US and Israel. They don't want to have large casualties, I guess. That is why they are shooting from far. And for Iran, it has lost its navy and military, but it is just surviving on drones and missiles. Other than that, geography. Those are the three things that Iran has brought to the table. Do you think that the very fact that the Western countries now are so shy of fatalities and casualties is the reason why this war is the way it is?
I didn't get your last. It just trailed off the last part of your question.
My last part was that this fear of having mass casualties is one reason why this war is going the way it is, that you just bomb from far and hope for the best. And if they are not able to, like there is no ground invasion at all. So this is a war without an army, so to speak, only air force and tech.
Well, you see, when you say how the war should be prosecuted, it is directly related to the aim that you have selected for yourself. Now, we all know what kind of multiple aims that USA and Israel have set for themselves. That they will take out the nuclear weapons, they will take out the missile, they will do this and change the regime and all that. But I think it's quite a hodgepodge of aims. What we were taught in army, or rather in military, that aim should be pretty simple and easy to achieve. When I say easy to achieve, means you fight for that, as simple as possible. 5, 6, 7 labels if you have put, and some of them are very, very, what should I say? It's a long drawn kind of process which requires a very different kind of military operation. So just by bombing targets here, there, and everywhere, it cannot. I mean, well, if you just pick up a military history and just go through the examples of Second World War, Britain was carpet bombed. So many countries, who participated in Second World War, they were bombed like crazy. But that did not end the war like that. Of course, boots on ground is very much a prerequisite, which America is very shy of, and perhaps Iranians have read that. And I think almost everybody knows that they are very, very shy of putting their boots on ground. And therefore, they are not so much worried about those invasions. All they are worried, and of course, the second part is, it was very simple for Iran, like Americans, there is a historical thought process that America is so isolated, so far away, that nobody can reach America. In its history, there's only one that bombing, when it took place, Twin Tower bombing, America was never invaded mainland. It was the Pearl Harbor was one, and second one was that bombing. So there is a mindset in American leadership that we are very safe and we can do what we want to everybody else. But what they forget then, that there are 700 plus military bases around the world. You must have heard about that story. There was a king and his life, or rather heart, was in a parrot. So your parrot is all over around your enemy. And he is going to twist the neck of that parrot and you will be crying. So this is one major disadvantage which American never thought, that their bases are going to be attacked and they will get a lot of pain. Of course, I would say brilliant geostrategic stroke that Iran has played is the control of Hormuz. This is absolutely brilliant. And I wonder why, that actually baffles me, that American generals, those who are leading this campaign, have they not read the geography? Did they not read the military history to understand how can they control and manage this operation? Right now, what I find that Americans are stuck because of these two reasons. They don't know how to disentangle from Strait of Hormuz, and second, that their bases are so vulnerable and they don't know how to protect all of them. I don't know whether I could answer your question, because the
Yes.
second part got trailed off a bit.
No, you're very, very correct that Iran had threatened to target America's bases. This was not a secret. We knew about that. In fact, I ran a simulation about a few months before with my undergraduates. Generals are 19, 20-year-olds. A simulation. And so there were three people who I designated as Iran. And you know what their first move was? Their first move was to close the Strait of Hormuz. So my 20-year-old students understood that this is how we are going to respond. And then, of course, they also were targeting US bases. In fact, Iran has apparently done such a terrific job that many of the bases are uninhabitable. So Iran has literally pushed the US out. The whole idea of attacking Jordan is because the US has kind of stepped back, and they feel that if all the bases in Jordan are also destroyed, then the US has no choice but to pull back its forces into Israel. And so, in that sense, you can say that on the ground, whatever ground warfare is happening, Iran is far more successful than the US has been. But from a tactical point of view, do you think that the tactics that the US is using now, and given what its goals are, like how can the US get out of this? Because Donald Trump needs to say, I won the war. Otherwise, it's not going to stop. He could continue, this erratic bombing of Iran indefinitely. We could, like the Ukraine-Russia war has gone on for 4 years, more than 4 years now. So this could go on for years and years with Iran continuing to suffer and the US just racking up debt, borrowing money and then attacking. How do you see, what tactical changes do you think they can make in order to at least claim some victory and get out?
Okay, so yeah, so if you take a very classical campaign, so what happens is it goes through three phases. First one is softening the target. In that phase, you bomb all the important military targets, make things very, very difficult for enemy to move around and dispose of its resources and all that. The second comes the invasion phase, when you actually hit the target, boots on ground and those kind of things. Of course, thereafter you do the consolidation part. Now, in this, right now, what is happening in Iran, actually from the classical war fighting point of view, soften the targets or whatever it is. Now, actually what happens is when you do it for a long time, it becomes a kind of a war by attrition. Mm-hmm. It's attriting the enemy. War by attrition is what is going on right now, which in a classical warfare could be first phase, where you pulverize the enemy and enemy targets and resources, instruments, equipment and all that. It's gone on for a long time. Now it appears, since there are no forces facing each other, so this is the battle of attrition, which will go on for a very, very long time. But eventually, if those objectives have to be attained, then you have to enter the second phase, which I don't think America is very keen to enter, nor are there any, I would say, there is any wisdom in putting boots on ground after all this. So it is a kind of a war by attrition, which is going on. It may go on for a very, very long time.
There are some people in the US, like Professor Robert Pape of University of Chicago, who use the model of escalation ladder to talk about it. And they say that the United States is trapped in this escalation ladder. It has no choice but to keep escalating. I mean, it's a scary thought that if there is constant escalation, then we will at some point be talking about use of tactical nuclear weapons or more. And sometimes the way Donald Trump talks, we will destroy the civilization or we'll do something so horrible that has never happened. When he says things like that, it used to frighten us before. That is he talking about use of nuclear weapons and or tactical nuclear weapons, especially with the mountains and the infrastructure. But it appears that this is more like a snake and ladder thing, General Saab. Like they seem to go up on the escalation ladder and then come down, and they have some temporary lulls, which shows that Donald Trump is looking for something to get out of this war. And then there's pressure on him from the Iranians who won't back off, and from the Israelis who keep pushing the US and the Israeli lobby here in the US to continue with this war. So we are looking at a very strange scenario of asymmetry. A country with two countries with such powerful air forces fighting a country which has next to nothing in terms of air defenses, right? I mean, one reason why I think the US has been so successful is that Iran seems to have zero air defense. Even yesterday, when the Saudis went and bombed Iraq, there was like no response in terms of air defense system. They just took the hits. What lessons can countries like India and others draw from this war that we are seeing, where there is such an asymmetry of power, resources, wealth? This is clearly a global North versus global South war that we are seeing at the moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've heard Professor Robert Pape and his that escalation trap and things like that. You see, Doctor, what happens is this escalation is an integral part of war fighting. Whenever you enter a war, you actually calibrate, and that is why it is called escalation ladder. So you go step by step, cause greater damage, harm to the enemy, and keep weighing your options after every step. It's a very natural process of escalating the cost, making it difficult for the enemy to withstand, and you up the ante for enemy. This is a well-known strategy or tactics of warfare.
Yeah.
Now, when he uses the word trap, now, trap is actually a negative connotation of this outcome, which means that a commander was going up the ladder for an escalatory ladder, and suddenly he found that he cannot come down. He got into a trap. Now, that's a very unwise commander. There is a logic when you say ladder that you go one step at a time, and you also have your second foot on the step below. In case you find it is not paying the result, you immediately come down. Trap is something like you have gone down a slide, you have no control over it, you fell in a pit. That's a trap. So if American generals are allowing themselves to fall in a trap, I have no words for that. It should not happen. It should not have happened. Now, one more thing about Professor Pape's this thing. I remember I heard one interview of his on CNN 18 in India on 30th of March. And where I distinctly remember, he said that in his interview that this is on 30th of March, he says there is a 70% possibility of ground attack in the next 10 to 15 days.
Yeah.
Now we are in August, coming to end July.
Yeah.
Where is the ground invasion? So what is happening is that these kind of deductions, no, I don't read that. Nobody falls in an escalation trap. I mean, I'm sure Trump also must be listening to his military commanders. They also know how the war has to be escalated, how tempo to be brought down, and so many other things are involved, your logistics, your ammunition availability and all that. Just on this point, like I mentioned right in the beginning, Dr. Saab, that I was quite amazed as to how the intelligence has not paid, they have not paid attention to intelligence about Iran. Second thing which is bothering me is what I'm hearing is Americans are running out of ammunition, missiles, and things like that. I can understand the cost differential, that so many $1 billion missile is killing one
drone.
That I can understand. But what I can't understand, that number one military power of the globe, in 1 month or 2 months time, running out of ammunition. What were they telling China that you take to that what's that China's claim on that Taiwan, and we'll
Yeah.
deal with you. You can't deal with Iran, and out of 1 month you are saying I'm running out of ammunition. It is absolutely amazing. I just can't believe that this kind of I would say war planning was there in America before they took on Israel. Iran. So that is as far as the Robert Papes thing is concerned. Now, about lessons for India. You see what happens, Doctor? Every country formulates its strategy, its war fighting mechanism based on its own resources. India, with its resources, and of course the terrain and the ground that we have, and like we have high altitude areas when we are dealing with China, where the warfare is very, very different. Very different. Movement is so sluggish. And mountains also provide so much of cover against all these projectiles which is flying all over the countryside. So what happens is the lesson that India will draw from this conflict will be many lessons, I would say. Of course, one top of the line will be the intelligence. If you don't have that, there is a problem. You must look into it. Second will be about the preparedness of their army morale. What Iran is showing right now is high morale. That is the second lesson that Indian Army would be learning from this. Third is endurance. You have to stick and fight it out. And terrain gives you that advantage. And I have seen in one of my last podcasts, I think I spoke to you, India being a non-expansionist power, it does not have any aggressive or offensive designs. When that happens, the defender has a great advantage of using the terrain to its advantage and save on casualties and all that. It is the attacker which is exposed and buys more casualties. But within that larger game plan, there will be small battles where we will also be going for attack and things like that. We'll have to understand that what kind of casualties we may suffer, what kind of resources we require. The other thing that we will perhaps India will learn from this is preparing the nation for the war. It's extremely important for a nation to be ready. Now you take the example of Ukraine right now, there is a shortage of soldiers. And we have seen in last 3 years that Russians and Ukraine, then they're fighting. God knows from where all people were coming and fighting. No, that's not the way to fight a war. So you have to prepare your nations also to be ready to put the armed forces, which is going to execute the task on ground. And one more lesson that I would say we will learn from them is that because of this missile warfare, because of this drone and other thing, we need to have a very efficient coordination and technology, network technology to deal with this. Our anti-missile weapon systems, plus your interceptors, your radars, which are actually tracking the missiles and all that, they have to be beautifully integrated with each other. So that with very little amount of ammunition, you will be able to engage maximum targets. So this is new thing in warfare. I'm talking about the drone and missile warfare. There's a lot to learn as far as this dimension or this aspect of the warfare is concerned.
Unfortunately for India, the chances of India's war with a country like US or Israel is next to zero. But the enemy that the India potentially faces is not shy of sending ground troops, and I'm thinking of China. So that's an entirely different war, which will be,
Yes.
it'll have all the dimensions that we see in terms of technology, missiles, and we also saw how China had deployed its intelligence, real-time intelligence during Operation Sindoor, and its so everything that you're seeing in this war, we will see that if, God forbid, there was a war with China, but there will be this additional dimension of ground warfare too, I think, with China. So I also wanted to ask you one more question about the morale of the soldiers that you talked about, which is fascinating. There was this perception that the entire Iranian population is against the regime and it will collapse. And I think what the Iranians have done is that I don't know whether the Iranian population is supporting the Iranian government. They turned out in millions for Khamenei's funeral. It is considered the biggest religious event on planet Earth in terms of the number of people who showed up for that. So
Yeah.
they send the message that, well, we may not like you as a government, but we are with you as a country. And I think that has an important aspect which America doesn't have. 70 to 80% of the population here is against the war. Trump is fighting the war with his party not interested. The American intelligence said there is no threat. I think even the American army is not in this war. There was this discussion that just day before yesterday, J.D. Vance and General Kane, who is the chief military officer, they actually briefed Donald Trump on the decline of munitions. And our problem with the munitions, General Saab, is that these are very sophisticated devices. One interceptor costs $4 million to block a $20,000 drone. But those interceptors all need those magnets from rare earth minerals. So in many ways, China will control how and to what pace at which America will be able to replenish its supplies. Donald Trump, I think, deserves to be court-martialed for exposing America's and making America so vulnerable for this war. If, God forbid, there is a major escalation with Russia or with China, we will be sitting ducks, and this is because of this no planning. I think this war was fought without a plan, and it is, I think, sending important messages to the rest of the world.
Well, so firstly, on the last point that you mentioned, that this war was fought without any planning, I find it difficult to digest. Why? Because all these years that what we have seen, both America and Israel, they said that only country which we have to sort out in the world right now is Iran. And if that was their thought process for all these years, across the party lines and across their various presidencies, how come they are not prepared for it? That's a very baffling question. That the only enemy that you have, which is saying Merg America and no, Israel does not have a right to live, you don't require a rocket science thereafter to understand who are you going to fight and when. And you had got attacked Iran. So if the time is of your choosing, enemy is of your choosing, what are you complaining about? That I am not prepared. So that is one part. I just want to make two observations. Dr. Saab, आपने जो mention किया about Iranian mass public support for this war. What happens is, Dr. Saab, whenever there is a war, barring few countries where population is actually not supporting its army, most of the wars, whenever they were fought, during the war, once the war starts, people stand behind the government of the day. They stand behind the leadership and fight, no matter how many differences you have on ground. It is a standard phenomena. Problem comes after the war is over, when the dissection starts, then reality starts coming out, and those kind of, somebody, their own president going to be hanged and things like that. All kind of things happen thereafter. Now, you mentioned about Khomeini's funeral and million or God knows how many thousand people came out. I don't see that as a indication of Iran's, steadfast support for the regime. आपको याद होगा, just about, I think, year back or 2 years back, when that Masha Amini thing took place, this is the same regime which has killed 3,000 of their own people. How can people forget that?
In January,
how can people forget that? Yeah. So now they are standing behind and they are coming. And now tell me if, and all these your religious scholars and all that, people were throwing their caps out. There was such a massive protest going on in Iran, and this regime killed more than 4,000 people over there. So what happened to those sentiments? How have they evaporated? No, they are very much there on ground. Number one. Number two, where is the doubt that this regime is not a very oppressive regime? They have been under sanction. There's a lot of deprivation. People are no doubt about it. But what happens is, during the time of war, everybody puts finger on the lip. Now this is the time to support the leadership and fight bigger enemy, which is America or whatever it is. Now, as far as the show of this communist support is concerned, very much it was an instant, I would say, spontaneous support, and people came out and all that out of this thing, because this is the, I would say, religious angle, that Shaheed is a very big honor in Islamic countries. So they say, by 86-year-old man ko aapne maar diya, what have you done? He is a great leader as far as we are concerned. So that spontaneous outpouring, emotional support, and people came out, all very correct, all right, and interpretations also right. But once this war is over, then the reality of the regime and the problem of people start surfacing. Then you have things to answer, and there are a lot of problems. So Iran has got this issue which they have to deal with after this war is over.
Yeah,
and as far as the आपने China का mention किया था with regard to India, you see, we have started this discussion from the point of view, what is the aim, what is the military aim, what is the problem of, I mean, China's problem with India. China claims whole of Arunachal Pradesh, and they have some claim in the western sector.
Yeah.
The bone of contention is they don't recognize McMahon line. They say this whole of Arunachal Pradesh is ours. उन्होंने नाम वगैरह भी दिए हुए हैं. They have named Indian villages and things like that. Same is the case with West. Now, if that is their war aim, that to take the Arunachal Pradesh back, it is going to be a war on ground. It is a super high altitude terrain where 18,000 feet, 17,000 feet environment. That little thing that took place, that Galwan, in a matter of this, there was the issues, there were problems. Chinese did face the serious logistic problems. So अगर 15 दिन की या 1 महीने की वॉर को सस्टेन करने की इतनी प्रॉब्लम हो रही है, then to take over Arunachal Pradesh or western sector, it's a very, very mammoth task. I don't think China is seriously contemplating fighting with India and all that. Of course, there is a dispute, there is a problem which will be resolved. Of course, business. So that is as far as India-China thing is concerned. About the last point I would say about the America, Dr. Ekbar, I have said in one of my previous podcasts with you, a soldier fights best when he is fighting for his own land. If you are fighting all over the world, you go anywhere and start fighting, and I want to turn this country into a democracy, therefore I am going to shed 5,000 lives. American soldiers say, why? What are we doing here? Why are we fighting in Iran, Iraq, everywhere? But as a superpower tag, you take it upon yourself that I am going to fight everywhere. And that is exactly what happens is within 14, 15, 20 days, there is a serious problem in the, I would say, American public. They start asking, whose war are we fighting? Right now also we are hearing that, why are we fighting Israel's war? Yeah. So if the purpose of the war is not defined, why should soldier put his heart and soul and life online for that? But when country like India or Iran is fighting, they are fighting for existence, survival. Yeah. They definitely are going to fight very pitched battle. Same thing happens with India, like when Chinese, we had that problem with Galwan and all that. We say nothing doing. We have to fight it out. Whatever would be the cost. But not to American army in this particular case.
That's a very good point, sir. There's absolutely no doubt. In fact, there's also a lot of communication problems. As far as the American elite is concerned, we know that we are not fighting for democracy or values. We are fighting for American primacy. This is what it is, to maintain and sustain American domination and hegemony. That is the reason why we fight wars all over the world. And if we go on and tell that to the public is not going to fund that or support that wars of primacy. So basically, we say what is called as white lies to our own population, saying we are promoting democracy. I mean, look, we lost 3,000 lives plus in Afghanistan, and Taliban is just there, back there. So we achieved nothing in Afghanistan. If if we had said our goal was to defend America from Al Qaeda, we did it. We achieved that. We got Bin Laden, but the war was successful. But if we say, oh, we are there to promote democracy, make a liberal, democratic state out of Afghanistan, it's a complete and utter failure. General Saab, thank you very much for joining the show. It was very instructional in many ways, and thanks you for your insights. Thank you very much for joining Conversations.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.